A lot going on at the NovaCare Center. John McMullen, I'm sure, is foaming at the mouth as he's listening to me right now. He's set to come in for his daily coverage.
I want to see the bank. I want to see the bank account, Mike. I think there's a check from Josh Harris in there.
You want to see my bank account? That's what you said? It's a rubber stamp if it's coming from the Sixers, right?
Yeah. There's a Josh Harris check in there somewhere.
Somewhere. We'll see. All right. Let's start with Murray, because today Chip Kelly was asked about 900 Murray questions. You wouldn't even know LaShawn McCoy was coming to town or that he spoke today either. But let's start with Murray. And just give me your opinion on how Chip Kelly, he spoke today on it at length, how he received the news and how he's handling the news.
I think he handled it pretty well as can be expected. Obviously, it's not a good situation for him or the team, and it's one of those things you always talk about, that there's too much controversy with this team every week, and I don't know where to put my finger on it, but it's time for this organization to have a clean week, as I like to call it, with no outside controversies being generated by players or coaches or what have you. And it seems like so long since we've had that. And you're right, the entire press conference was basically trying to explain what happened and talking about first-class travel and how DeMarco Murray didn't seek out the owner. They just happened to sit next to each other, and he happened to complain about the offense. And maybe the biggest news, by the way, Mike, did you know this? Chip Kelly's not the general manager of the Eagles. That's what he told the Buffalo reporters on a conference call with them. So it's always something with this organization. It's always something with this team. And Chip Kelly's always caught up in the minutia and trying to deflect things by taking a big issue and trying to talk about, as I said, the minutia of it.
John McMullen with 97.3 ESPN.com. He was asked an interesting question. He said, has Murray told you that he's frustrated? And he said that he has had a meeting with DeMarco. How did that go?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's pretty evident he's frustrated, and I think, that's a check mark in Chip's column, because he could have went in a different direction and claimed that he didn't know anything about it. So at least he acknowledged it and, kind of talked about the promises, because there was, another Ed Werder report about Kelly promised Murray certain things in order to get him to sign here. And explain that process. But the bottom line is, and I think if you saw Herm Edwards' rants it was really about Shady McCoy, but it could have been about DeMarco Murray just as easily. It's really this generation of players, and they're playing for the name on the back of the jersey instead of the one on the front. And I think there's a little frustration from that aspect of, what has always been the so-called ultimate team game.
97.3 ESPN, we are live with John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com insider. John, Sal Powell mentioned earlier in the day today about the fact, when the Eagles released Miles Austin, kind of like the inside big deal was that Sal Powell kind of revealed to us the fact that Miles Austin and DeMarco Murray were really close. Can you give us a little bit of your insight on that?
Yeah, they were close. I think that's overblown. I mean, obviously they were longtime teammates in Dallas, and DeMarco is new here. Miles is new here, so obviously they sort of gravitated towards each other. But this is, people who have been around this league as long as DeMarco Murray and Miles Austin know, people get released and cut all the time. If you don't perform in this league, you're going to move on. And Miles Austin didn't perform, so I don't think there's anything to DeMarco Murray being upset by that scenario. If anything, the Eagles probably gave Miles Austin a little bit more rope than he should have gotten, maybe because he was friends with DeMarco Murray. Who knows? So you could spin it that way. But the bottom line to me is the guy just didn't perform, and no one's going to be upset. You know, certainly on a personal level, you hate to see your friend be unemployed, but it's just the reality of the game.
John McMullen here, Josh Hennick back in the studio. We're trying to reconnect with Mike Gill over at Mays Landing Golf and Country Club. John, I also wanted to ask, Mike and I were talking about this earlier, and it's something that Sal Powell brought up as well, is about the fact that, this whole thing with the Ed Werner thing, some people are trying to give Ed Werner a bunch of flack over his report, but the reality is that, how much of it is information that got leaked, kind of like a who's who hearsay?
Well, certainly. I mean, Ed is very plugged into the Cowboys. It's very close to DeMarco Murray's camp. It's easy to see how that story happened, and that's not a black mark on Ed Werner. Mike and I kind of talked about the same thing with the Sixers over the past couple of days. People tend to blame the messenger. It's a news story, so he has to report it. And it was essentially true. DeMarco Murray's complaining about the offense. Certainly Jeffrey Lurie wasn't going to leak that to the media. Chip Kelly wasn't going to leak that to the media. So it came from one camp, and it came from DeMarco Murray's side. We all understand that. We all know that. But that's nothing against Ed Werner. He's got to report the stories that he has. And it's a big story because the Eagles spent a significant amount of money to bring this guy in. He's not happy. He certainly hasn't been successful, and he doesn't look like a fit moving forward for this offense, and yet he's still owed significant money next season.
The money aspect of this thing really comes into play here, where they can't cut him, they can't do much with him. So how do they keep peace and harmony going on in that locker room?
It's tough, and I often talk about, we mentioned that with the Sixers and Sam Hinkie the other day. It's one of those important parts of the job that people don't think about, and that's navigating through the shark-infested waters of personalities, many of them who are unhappy. DeMarco Murray's unhappy. So that's one of the things you get paid the big bucks for, and Chip really hasn't done a great job. We constantly hear about this narrative of culture, but all of a sudden you bring in a high-priced free agent who's not really ingrained in this particular culture. He doesn't have a lot of loyalty to this organization, and this kind of thing happens. So on one hand, you have the lip service toward culture. On the other hand, you're bringing in big money free agents, hired guns, and you have this issue that you're having.
Yeah, and, Chip, today, really, I was surprised because with McCoy coming here, there wasn't virtually any conversation about McCoy, very little anyway. He got a little he got a little feisty. I mean, did he seem frustrated by this? Does he seem, we talked about, like you said, with the Sixers, like Brett Brown is frustrated because the GM never came to him and told him he was trading Michael Carter-Williams, or the GM doesn't speak for him on the Embiid stuff, makes him take the bullet. Now, Chip is the GM, but this is a situation where he went over his head and talked to the owner. So was Chip frustrated because Murray went over his head? I mean, was he disappointed? How do you read the way that Chip thought this all kind of came to be?
Yeah, I'm sure he was disappointed. But, with Shady McCoy, I think he mentioned today that when the trade went down, he didn't talk to Chip Kelly. He talked to Jeffrey Lurie. So it seems like the owner is doing more of the communication than the head coach and the general manager. And that, to me, might be an issue at some point. We'll see how it continues to develop with other players down the line. But that's been one of the knocks. It's also something Brandon Boykin brought up. And the fact that this guy is not a good communicator. Now, it's tough, especially when you have the reputation of a Shady McCoy, let's be honest. You have to take that into account. You have to take into account that Murray has been ineffective. You have to take into account that Brandon Boykin was not happy with his role. But where there's smoke, there tends to be fire. And there's a lot of players who believe this guy doesn't communicate very well.
John, he was asked about why is Murray struggling, 3.5. He said it's a lot of moving parts, and I'm glad someone asked the follow-up, well, the other guys aren't struggling. So is that his way of kind of, number one, not throwing Murray under the bus, and number two, trying to be diplomatic as possible by saying, yes, I understand this guy is not a good fit for us? Like, he's not going to come out and admit it, but is he subtly admitting that, yes, I'm starting to understand, my actions are showing you that Murray's not a great fit for me?
Well, I say that so I understand it, and I will say I don't know if necessarily everyone else hasn't struggled. I think if you look at Ryan Matthews, he's been the one guy who's been productive consistently with his touches. If you think about Darren Sproles, there was a stretch there where he was extremely unproductive and extremely unhappy. And I don't think Kenyon Barner has played enough. So I don't necessarily agree with that statement, but certainly Chip can't say he's not a fit for my system after he went out and spent all that money and tried to spin it like he was a better fit than LaShawn McCoy. It's just really difficult, and it's another one of those issues you have where the head coach is the guy making all the decisions. It's very difficult to contradict yourself because you're making yourself look bad, and that's going to be an issue moving forward in a number of instances because of the power that Chip Kelly wanted and now has.
John, Ryan Matthews limited today at practice, expected to play this week. Do you anticipate that they work him right back in and give him, if they're working three guys in, does he become the lead guy, or do you think that he'll have a role similar to what he had before?
I think he's going to be the lead guy. I think Chip is kind of fed up with DeMarco Murray and with a combination of things. It starts with the NFL. Now you add this into it. So he's certainly not happy with him. And Matthews is obviously well rested as far as his legs go, and he should be ready 100% to go down the stretch in these four games. And he's the one back that could really, really produce heavily for this team. We always talk about Darren Sproles. As dynamic as he is, as difficult as a matchup he is, his size limits it. It just does. You can't give him the football 25, 30 times week after week after week. Matthews, in theory, you can. Obviously, he has the injury history, but we're only talking about 4 games. It's 4 games to try to win this division, and I think they're going to try to run Ryan Matthews for those 4 games.
Yeah, well, like you said, he's missed 3 weeks. They didn't use him a lot. He should be pretty fresh down the stretch they come here. Bradford, last game, not a great game. But this is a Buffalo team that you can throw the ball on. And with the running back situation where it is, it'd be interesting to see if they lean on Sam Bradford a little bit more this week against Buffalo, which is, a team that you could move the ball through the air on.
Well, I don't know if the Bills have very good cornerbacks. I think people who look at that say you can throw the football on them, they're just looking at raw numbers. I think they're in football, which is obviously not good against the pass, but their safeties are weak. Their cornerbacks are very good, very, very good. And we've talked about it all year. The Eagles receivers generally don't match up well against mediocre corners, never mind guys like Darby and Gilmore who are going to play this week. So I don't know if that's necessarily the case. They're going to be effective throwing the football. If they are, it's going to be down the seam. It's going to be to the tight ends. It's going to be to the backs. It's going to be taking advantage of those safeties and linebackers because there's no way that wide receiver group is getting consistent separation against these cornerbacks.
Hey, John, when you look at that offense, the McCoy, Watkins, Taylor, as a running quarterback, how's that team matching up with this Philly defense?
I think it matches up pretty well, but I think they match up pretty well against most defenses because they do have a lot of playmakers. Their next step has to be consistency. And that's always the case when you have a young quarterback. But when they're clicking on all cylinders and Shady's running the football, they have the good Watkins brother. Jalen's back with the Eagles, but Sammy is a going to be a star receiver in this league, and Charles Clay is one of the tougher matchups at tight end in this league. So they have guys at every position on offense that can hurt you and make big plays. The key is the quarterback position and the consistency. The one thing Taylor gives you is obviously the dual threat that Chip Kelly has always wanted, and he might be the fastest quarterback in football. So you have to spy him. You have to pay attention. And we all know how much man-to-man coverage Bill Davis likes to run. I have nightmares of cornerbacks turning their head and Tyrod Taylor running right up their back.
Hey, John, is this, a lot of people are criticizing Murray. They win the game. He goes to Lurie. But is this a product of him being in Dallas where people go over the coach's head there all the time and go right to the owner? I mean, is this Murray kind of is it like it's ingrained in him that that's what you do? You don't talk to the coach, you go right to the owner?
Very good point, Mike. Very good point. Dallas is, Jason Garrett is probably the least powerful head coach in the National Football League. He's a head coach by name only. Jerry Jones runs everything in Dallas, and, that's what he grew up in. That's what he knows. Now, he should have enough sense to realize every other organization in the NFL doesn't work that way, and it's pretty evident the minute you step in to the NovaCare complex who's in charge, and that's Chip Kelly. So I don't want to put too much stock in it, but, he's come from a completely different culture where the owner is just omnipresent to this culture where the head coach is the be-all, end-all. And maybe it is. Maybe it is an issue, and he doesn't realize, and he's got to navigate things in a different way.
All right, John McMullen. And, by the way, John will be filling in for me tomorrow with Pete. They'll be live at Chickies and Pete's in Atlantic City, so you'll hear more on this, I'm sure.